Congressman Roskam, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Congressman, last week I was talking about this IRS probe. I had Congressman Bustani on the show. And, I mean, this is just getting worse and worse. This week you had Lois Lerner on testifying. And, you know, first she says that she didn't do anything illegal, and then she takes the fifth. If she didn't do anything illegal or criminal, why is she taking the fifth?
I think her approach on taking the Fifth Amendment is the perfect symbol, the perfect example of the folly and arrogance of the Internal Revenue Service. So the way the Fifth Amendment works is you come in and you make your claim under the Fifth Amendment that you assert your right not to incriminate yourself, which, look, everybody has the right to the Fifth Amendment, and there's no quarrel there. But what you don't get to do is rewrite your own rules around the Fifth Amendment, and the doctrine is very clear. Once you start talking, you waive your Fifth Amendment right as to the things that you're talking about. So she comes in and she says, I didn't lie to Congress. Everything that I did was right. She made an incredibly foolish mistake, and it's the same type of mistake and the same type of error that the Internal Revenue Service has made. They think they run under their own rules, and they can make it up, and they can treat the American public any way that they want to.
So
the good news is this won't stand.
What's the next step then? Would the committee ask her back to testify? I mean, as you say, she already made an initial statement before taking the fifth. So now she has to testify, correct?
The committee has a decision to make, and Chairman Darrell Issa of the Oversight Committee, I think, is in consultation with his lawyers, and they're going to make a good decision about how to move forward. But they can certainly compel her to come back, and then if she does not testify, she would be held in contempt of Congress, which is a very significant thing.
Correct.
And when it all comes down to it, look, there's two things that have to happen. The facts have to come out, and the fact how this came to pass, who gave this order, how did this system and this culture get created within the Internal Revenue Service, where they felt like, number one, they could lie to Congress and the American people, and number two, that they could target people based on their political philosophy, and number three, how do you make sure this never happens again, and who's to be held for account? And those are the questions that I think we very carefully need to get to.
Now, Mrs. Lerner's testimony is key because, I mean, the information that you have so far is that even 2 years ago, she already knew that this targeting was happening, yet she met with congressional staff and she didn't say anything.
Yeah, that's right. And the IRS was directly asked by members of Congress, both in writing and in oral testimony and in oral presentations, is targeting going on at the Internal Revenue Service based on political philosophy? And the answer time and time and time again was, absolutely, it is not happening. And the other thing is, these answers from the IRS were so condescending. In other words, oh, Congressman, thank you so much for bringing this up, but of course we're not doing this. And what they're really saying is, don't you worry your pretty little selves about this. We'll take care of everything. And instead, they were doing the exact thing that they claimed that they weren't doing, and they lied about it. And they're going to be held to account.
Now, you had a very interesting exchange recently when Acting Commissioner Miller, or former Acting Commissioner Miller, testified, and you basically said, look, because he keeps saying, like Mrs. Lerner, that they didn't do anything illegal or criminal, but you basically stated that, well, if you didn't do anything illegal or corrupt, then I guess you're incompetent.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, so they're arguing two things, and they're both outrageous arguments. The first is we didn't do anything corrupt, but then what they're really saying is if they're not corrupt and they came up with this situation, then they're simply incompetent. And I think that it's actually a combination of both. And I think the corruption became very significant over a period of time, and I think this notion of lying to the American people, when you're the enforcement agency for the Internal Revenue Code, and you think about the power that the IRS has in the lives of individuals, you think about an average family that blows an entire weekend trying to fill their taxes out. They send their taxes in, and they kind of think, well, I don't have a bunch of big shot professionals doing my taxes, so I may be missing out on something. But at the same time, the IRS may be coming after me because I missed something, and they're going to hammer me with interest and penalties. And then you find out that they're targeting people based on how they look at the world, and they are and they're lying about it. That those things.
Well, to me, it's the audacity of an acting commissioner or former acting commissioner Miller to say, look, the officials in Cincinnati were foolish, but they were not doing anything criminal. Well, you're just targeting conservative organizations. You're not targeting liberal organizations. I mean, that argument it's disingenuous. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
It was nonsense. And I think one of the best exchanges or the best presentations came from Congressman Mike Kelly from Pennsylvania, who looked him right in the eye and said, you claim to be outraged. You're not outraged. And he kind of walked through this. You have no answers, Congressman Kelly said to Commissioner Miller. And he said, you know what happens when an average taxpayer comes into the IRS and they don't have answers? How does the IRS treat them? And, toward that end, this idea of just lying to the American people, covering it up, and acting as if this doesn't happen is nonsense. And part of the difficulty was that the acting commissioner, this is Commissioner Miller, said, well, we have, I don't like it that you use the word targeting. I object to that characterization. Well, what a ridiculous claim. The IRS Inspector General's report uses the word targeting 16 times.
Right.
So this would end well if the IRS came in and they said, we lied and we regret it, and we fired the people that lied. We targeted, we regret it, we fired the people that targeted. Here's who did it. Here's how this environment was created. This is what we've done to stop it.
Congressman, let's go to a quick break, and we'll come back with you.
Got it.
Y ya estamos de regreso con el congresista Peter Roskam de Illinois. Congressman, the question that we need to ask as well is, what about the president? When did he find out about what was happening in the IRS? I mean, I don't think he's, criminally involved, but his counsel, the White House counsel, knew about this before the reports came out in the media. Before, I guess, they gave that speech before the American Bar Association saying this was going on, and he still didn't say anything public or call members of Congress to inform that this is what's happening. I mean, can we really believe him when he says that he learned about this through media reports, when this became public through the media reports?
There's no indication that President Obama knew about this before any of us. So I think we need to be careful about that, and let's let the facts go where the facts take us. So there's no indication that the president knew. But those around him clearly knew. And I think that they had a responsibility to either inform the president or take care of the problem to make sure that it's cleaned up. But don't be involved in a cover-up, and don't be complicit in lies from the Internal Revenue Service as part of the administration that has two political employees or two political appointees at its head. Don't be complicit in that. So this is part of the difficulty of the administration now, and it is this incompetence that is tinged with arrogance. And It's a very bad combination, and it's why one of the reasons I think they're in such bad shape right now.
But I guess that's the point. Even if they didn't tell him, they should have told him. And what does that say about the president's management style, that his immediate advisors don't inform the president about something outrageous as this?
Look, if you're the president of the United States and you've got a scandal that is not only showing targeting, it's showing lying, and this is an agency that touches every American family and every American business, and is poised to take over the enforcement of Obamacare, that's not something you want to read about in the paper or see on the internet. That's something you need to know about as the president of the United States to deal with quickly and deal with completely, and not have a bunch of hodgepodge information and ridiculous claims from the White House spokesman saying nobody knew anything when clearly many people knew quite a bit.
Now, we know that a lot of the bureaucrats within the IRS are liberal. the Treasury, the Union of Treasury Employees, which includes IRS, gave money to the president's campaign. I just wonder how much. I mean, the president clearly criticized the Citizens United decision, criticized the work of the C4 groups. Did he help create a culture of intimidation, encourage in a subtle way, this type of behavior by career employees that identify with the Democratic Party?
Well, here's what we do know. I mean, we do know that there were leading Democratic senators who wrote to the IRS and told the IRS, urged the IRS to do exactly what they're doing right now. That is, separate people out based on their philosophy and investigate certain groups. And are certain groups complying with the law? So we don't have to go very far to recognize that official Washington and many leading liberals did create part of this environment. Now, that being said, kind of on the good news side is there's some other liberals that are out there that are saying, this is an outrageous scandal, and they get it, that if conservatives are targeted this time, liberals can be targeted next time. And what we don't want, what should bring everybody together, both Republicans and Democrats, liberals, conservatives, and everybody, we don't want a bunch of bureaucrats deciding who it is that gets to participate in our public debate. These are people who have been hired by the American public to enforce laws, not to abuse laws.
Now, this story I don't think can be understood in a vacuum. I mean, we also have another story, the story of the Justice Department seizing the phone records of AP reporters, and now the story about Justice officials seizing the records of Fox News reporter James Rosen with the approval of Eric Holder. I mean, this is a major move by the Department of Justice. I
agree completely, and I think what ends up the direction that this goes is I think the press becomes an incredibly significant disciplinarian on this. No secret that the press has favored the Obama administration and given, really, in my opinion, every benefit of the doubt for the past 4 years. And now, all of a sudden, the press learns that the administration has been spying on them. And I mean, I just think the feeling of incredulity is just got to be amazing now that press people are feeling. We've been carrying this administration, and now they're targeting us.
Yeah.
So I think the press largely takes care of this on their own.
The irony is incredible. But, I mean, to determine if it's certainly unusual, the move by the White House. It frankly didn't happen under the Bush administration. I remember Attorney General Gonzalez saying that there was a time where they, in one occasion, where they thought of doing something similar, but they decided not to do it just out of respect for freedom of the press. But in this case, it's not only once with AP, but now twice with James Rosen, who's a reporter for a network that the White House has criticized on several occasions. So it's just very suspect.
I think it is suspect, and I think the threshold of explanation that the administration has to do is very, very significant. And it comes back to this trifecta of scandals with Benghazi. Folks are learning more about it. And there's another thing that has been largely pressed off the front lines, or the headlines, and that is Secretary Sebelius of Health and Human Services has been actively soliciting contributions from the very people that she regulates and has a great deal of authority over. And if I do say so, this is a very Chicago kind of thing to do, to call up people and to say, hey, I want you to contribute to this. And, oh, by the way, under the law, I have an incredible amount of discretion about how Obamacare is to be administered. And we'd think it would be a nice thing if you gave $1 million to this fund. And the level of scrutiny on that question hasn't been quite as extensive, but I think it's coming.
Right. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us.
It's an honor.